And do we have a quorum? Okay. So we're going to make a start on the ordinary meeting, and at some point we'll revert back to the public excluded scenario. And we have the first item on the ordinary business is the Local Government New Zealand Annual General Meeting. And Neville, is it, that's going to speak to this?
Yes, it is.
Kia ora, councillors. I'll take the report as read. This is a fairly standard process that happens on a regular basis, as some of you will be familiar with. There's just a couple of minor amendments in the report that I just draw your attention to. One is in section 5 of the report. In terms of the date, Thursday, 28th of July is a typo and should be changed to Wednesday, the 26th of July, so just a minor change. The other matter just want to bring to your attention is that Councillor Cookson has indicated that he can no longer attend and okay. So we'll leave that matter and just really present the report as it stands. As you were aware when you first considered this matter back on the 23rd of February and appointed the members identified in the report under section 4, that we've got 5 attendees, 4 of whom can be identified to be delegates, one of whom will be the delegate who will preside, who will present and make representation on behalf of council. But all those 4 that are identified have voting rights. One, like I say, to be appointed to decide and communicate on council's behalf. So all the detail is outlined in the report, including the making of remits, should councillors decide to do that. And that is delegated to the attendees to determine whether or not a remit is required or could be submitted on behalf of this council. That has a process associated with it, which is outlined in the policy documents that are attached. There's conditions around what constitutes a remit and what doesn't, and then the process around determining whether or not those remits are supported by LGNZ and then presented through to the AGM for consideration, as always, is also outlined in the policy documents. That's really the general purpose of this report today. And as you can see in the staff recommendation, we're seeking that those already identified attendees under section 4 are identified to perform the functions of presiding delegate and the alternate presiding delegate, and those other 2 delegates who will just attend with voting rights. Those are the key matters in my view, but as I said, happy to take questions.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. You've got the staff recommendation, bullet point number 3 and number 4. Can you explain what the XXX, that the may put any number of remits, what does that mean?
So that really is the person who holds the presiding delegate role who gets determined today.
Those, through you, Mr. Chair, those remits are circulated, supported by 5 other councils, and so they're already known. So why would you be putting remits from the floor?
No, you have the opportunity to submit additional remits on behalf of council between now and the 25th of May.
Yeah.
And so those remits, if I'm understanding your question correctly, are determined by the attending delegates, whether or not they wish to identify and put remits through to to the AGM. But
So-
they do, as you say, they do have to be agreed and supported by other councils. So it's quite a process and a very short time frame in which to achieve it. They do not come back to this council until the next meeting, which will be after the AGM is held.
Sorry, I'm confused, if I may. My understanding is that council, not the individual delegate, who I'm assuming will be the chair, if there were remits to be put, this council would endorse them. It's not the sole prerogative of the chair to formulate a remit.
That's how we've done it in the past, yeah.
No, in the time frame, as I understand, and Marley can correct me if this is poor advice, is that in this time frame, that really delegating that decision around creating and presenting remits sits with the attendees who have been identified under Section 4 of the report. And that happens between now and I think the 25th of May. But happy to get confirmation or otherwise from Marley on that matter.
If someone could just turn theirs off so that Marley can get, oh, yeah, thanks.
Kia ora through you, Chairman. In response to the question, there's a couple of approaches that can be taken. In the most recent years, this council has decided to delegate decision-making on support of remits and also submitting remits to an individual on the basis that we've found in the past it's the time frame to go through the process of approving and determining what remits might be put forward is pretty tight. However, council could choose not to delegate that decision. What it would mean is that we may well get requests from other councils to support their remits, and it may not coincide with a regularly scheduled council meeting, and therefore we would just have to find a mechanism to bring all of council together to consider whether it would want to support those remits. Also, if council was of the view to put forward a remit itself, it could take the opportunity today to identify what those potential remits might be and or schedule some future date, occasion, meeting to have that discussion. So the delegation put forward is essentially on the basis that it is a tight timeframe to go through the entire process. But over to you, council, to determine how you might want to manage it.
If I may, in the greatest respect, Marley, this is no surprise. The annual conference happens every July, and every council has the opportunity in that 12-month cycle to go through a process of going through remits, and then all councillors are on board and agreeing those remits. The voting, I'm happy with being delegated to those on the day who may hear the merits of the discussion. And whilst the council may be indicating a situation where they would favour, the delegates hearing the arguments on the day would be the ones to make the final decision. But it is no surprise, it is not a tight time frame. It's only because we haven't got around to it. With the greatest respect, as I say, this is not a surprise. These remits are called for and done. And I am really disappointed to see that we are going to propose delegating to a group, and I have no problem with the group itself, but just the fact that it excludes what there's 5 there, 11 others, 9 others, from being involved in that decision making. That is not council acting together. That is so. On principle, I can't support it being done this way, but I'm happy that the delegates, and whether Robbie wants to stand down as one of those 4 delegates, because he's not sure whether he's coming or going just yet, hoping that he's going. But anyway, I make the point that this is not a surprise. It happens every year. Thank you.
Marley, did you want to respond to that? Okay, I'm just checking. Okay, so Councillor Nicol, you're next in line.
Thank you. Yeah, I do agree with you, Noel, on the part of involving all councillors in the remits. Whether we do that formally or informally, obviously, is the part we could figure out. And thank you for asking the questions on 3 and 4, because I didn't understand it either. Just for number 2 though, to keep things moving. Yeah, I was going to suggest that if Robbie, you're fine with it. I was going to suggest Pamela as the obvious presiding delegate at the start, and then say Angela, Mike, myself as the next ones down the list, just to get us moving.
Yeah,
I'm not quite happy to move the whole thing yet because I haven't worked out 3 and 4.
okay. Councillor Strange?
Yeah, the remit thing is interesting. I don't think we've put many in the past, but normally we just support other people's. But not to preclude that from happening this time around or in the future. But I tend to agree with Councillor Smith that if we could put a bit more thought into it moving forward, and allow a bit more time for a range of views on those remits. Yeah, possibly if number 3 was changed, I'd be happy to move that. And maybe number 4 should be Councillor Story reporting back. Yeah.
If I could just make a comment to help councillors that if you put names of those attending, if they put names as a delegate, you should attend the AGM. Now, I know that in the past, when I've been there, sometimes councillors have decided that isn't as much a priority as it was before they went to the conference. So I'm just tactfully trying to say that I suggest people who would like to attend the AGM be the ones who hold the votes.
And I'm happy to move it, sir, because they've got 2 delegates.
Just a moment.
through,
I think Councillor Dunbar-Smith, you wanted to say.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say, Noel's point on number 3, if that was changed to that the presiding delegate may support any number of remits rather than put, if we change the word to support so that we're supporting other ones, whereas something's not going to arrive out of the blue in the next month that we rest the council isn't aware of. I think that's formally what you generally do, isn't it? That you support other ones that are there, you're voting on them at the conference.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that's appropriate. Marley, you don't have any concerns about that?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that. And Dave, I had myself as D rather than Robbie because we don't know yet.
Okay,
And
Councillor
question-
Nicol, yes, you're
question
next.
Is, Chris, what is the timing? Do you know the time of when the AGM is? Because I am committed to go to the young elected members hui on the Wednesday, which sometimes has clashed.
I know they've changed the day because often it used to be on the last day, and
Yeah.
I think they've brought it forward. Now, I can't recall which day it is, but we can get that information.
Put me down and I'll try to go. If it clashes, it's obviously unfortunate.
Okay,
But they need to
Councillor
sort out the
Strange,
timing.
you're next. Can somebody just,
Yeah, I'm happy to move that. Just to set keen on going, then they should maybe take their name off. I know in the past I've been the alternate. There's not a lot of space in the meeting for 4 people, so yeah,
Councillor Smith?
normally 1 or 2 you get a seat for.
I don't know the protocols yet. Councillor Strange was mentioned in that resolution, moving the resolution. So I'm happy to do it in the alternative. If I don't know, do we nominate ourselves in motions here in the regional council, or could I get some assistance here, Marley? Or...
As the alternate
No,
presiding member?
Councillor Strange has moved the motion. She's
Right.
named in the motion.
Yep.
Is it normal protocol in the regional council for members to move motions that mentions themselves?
It is not, I guess, against meeting protocols. However, if you're talking about Yeah.
Transparency.
our general practice, good practice, it probably is best for someone other than those being appointed to be the mover and the seconder. So,
I'm
good
happy-
point.
I'm happy to support it, whether as mover or seconder, sir. And wonder whether councillor Nicol or Cookson. could
I
be,
think we've got possibly got a volunteer to make a move who's not listed up there. Would you be prepared to move that? Would you, councillor? Oh, okay. Okay. So we've got it covered. So we can vote on that. So all in favour of the lineup as listed up on the screen here. So we have Councillor Story as presiding delegate. We have Councillor Strange as a delegate and alternate. And we have Councillor Downard as a delegate and Councillor Nicol as a delegate. All in favour. Those opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we do need to formally receive the report, I believe. Have we done that in doing that? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on now. We're moving on to the adoption of the proposed 2022-2025 Triennial Agreement, and Karen is going to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Atamaria councillors. This report presenting the proposed 2022-25 Triennial Agreement for adoption is a process that is being followed by all councils in the Waikato region. And I'll take the report as read, just some new information coming through. To date, Waipa and Otorohanga have adopted the Triennial Agreement. And the meeting referred to 21st of April has gone ahead, and the Mayoral Forum has looked at some priorities it would like to advance, and it will be working on those and looking to finalise them. And through you, Chair, if I could look to the Chief Executive, is there a time frame for that, finalising those priorities?
No, what the Mayoral Forum did, they came up with a bunch of priorities, which they were then going to vote on. And I think that voting is going to be done remotely. I think they asked for it in the next couple of weeks, so it should be probably in the next week or so.
Thank you. So the Mayoral Forum in the next couple of weeks will be determining its work programme for the triennium. And to that, I shall put the agreement to you through the Chair for adoption.
Councillor Strange?
I'm happy to move.
Second. Yep. Seconded. All those in favour? Aye.
Thank you.
Just a note on the Mayoral Forum, I had a look at the website the other day. It's really out of date. Might be good to update that one day.
That is, I believe, in train with CoLab now,
Thank
the
you.
Secretariat. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the Waikato Wellbeing Project activity update. Welcome, Harvey Brooks. Good to see you, Harvey. You're going to be taking us through this process. Thank you.
Introduced by Karen.
Oh,
Introduced by Karen.
thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, so this is the Waikato Wellbeing Project's second annual update to this council, following our agreement with Well Energy Trust to go into partnership to support and, if you like, provide the backbone support to the Wellbeing Project. Waikato Regional Council supported this from the get-go because of its connection to our purpose under Local Government Act to promote the four well-beings: environmental, economic, social and cultural, now and into the future. And the Wellbeing Project gave us an opportunity to really understand people's lived experiences, what well-being means for them, and to understand the interventions that might enhance well-being. Importantly, it allowed us to start looking at ways of measuring and reporting on well-being so that we can report to our communities on, are we actually making a difference? On that note, I'm going to hand to Harvey, who can bring us up to date with activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, and good morning, Mr. Chairman and councillors. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very, very much for the opportunity to give you an update. I will take the paper as read, if that is okay, so I won't take you through that. I've just got a brief summary presentation which summarises and brings up to date a little bit further on the progress of the Waikato Wellbeing Project. And I hope that you noticed the data boards when you walked into the chamber this morning, which are part of the work that we've been doing on knowledge, which Karen mentioned recently. Dave, do I just cue you to go forward? So if you just go forward to the next slide, please. So just in terms of how we work, as Karen said, we were established as a partnership between the Waikato Regional Council and the Well Energy Trust. The project kicked off in around about 2018-19 with preliminary work and the identification of targets. And I started on the project in January 2021. There was a little bit of a pause there because of COVID, as you can appreciate. We're not an entity at all. We're not a legal entity. We operate under the umbrella of the Waikato Regional Council with support and funding from the Trust. And the reason for that is so as circumstances change, which they inevitably will, we don't have to unwind a legal structure in order for us to move to become something else if that is necessary. We do, however, have a Kaitiaki Advisory Board, and that's on the upper right of that diagram, chaired by two people, Mike Rolton, who's the General Manager of St Vincent de Paul in Hamilton, and Delwyn Abraham, who is a Senior Executive at the Accident Compensation Corporation, but was selected by Waikato Māori to be the Māori co-chair for this to reflect a Triennial partnership approach. The team itself, there's 5 mugshots there, including myself. There's only 2 full-time contractors. That's myself and Joe Wilson, and everyone who is involved in the project is a contractor. We don't have any employees. We have what are called manutaki for each of our wellbeing target areas, and they are like outcome leaders and advisors. And it's a pleasure to be sitting in front of at least 2 of them today, the chair himself and Jen Nicol, manutaki for several of our SDG areas. And there are about 25 of those across all of our SDGs. Next slide, please, Dave. I assure you there are more slides. This might be a little bit hard to read, but our vision, which we actually redeveloped about a year ago with the board, is that all our mokopuna are thriving. It used to be rather more sort of technical and complex. The board said, let's just keep this really, really simple and something that every human in this region can connect to, and that is whether I have grandchildren or not, I want them to succeed and thrive and have as good a life or better than we have had. So it's as simple as that. Our mission is to hear our people and transcend their future through positive impact. The real words there are hear our people. And so the Waikato Wellbeing Project does not write strategy or policy or rules. What it does is it tries to listen to people actually at the coalface, at the front, at the grassroots level as to what does wellbeing mean to them and how can we support those voices to complement the work of institutions such as the Waikato Regional Council, government, philanthropics, and so forth. Next slide, please. These slides will be a little bit hard to see at this scale, but we've got 4 priorities, and again, a key factor here is possible for us as a team of two plus to do that. So 4 priorities across the blue ribbon are the top. Major projects, select a few wellbeing areas and really dive deep into them to understand what drives them. So last year, we did a big research project on rangatahi, on youth wellbeing, and produced a report, which some of you may be familiar with, our Rangatahi Opportunity Report. We're now just commissioning a big bit of work on hunger and asking the question, why in the food bowl of New Zealand is anybody hungry? And to understand that better, because it's very, very contested. The second one there is wellbeing data and knowledge, and making that more accessible to people so that they are empowered to make decisions about their own wellbeing. And we've been working on something with the Regional Council and others called Te Ara Potama, which I will come back to in a second. The third one there is lots of little fires, and that is the idea that for some of us, like me, data is great. I love data. It tells me a lot of things. But for a lot of people, it's just not interesting. what they're really inspired by are stories of real people doing real things out there in the community. So we've started a video storytelling initiative where we go into the community, we find people doing extraordinary things, we capture that on short 3 to 5 minute videos and share those online. And those are doing very well. And the fourth one there is Waha, which is advocacy, which you'll be very, very familiar with in terms of making submissions on significant regional and national initiatives. Going through the centre there is a pillar around Waikato, and that is simply to state that we are here to work with the leaders of the Waikato region, not to duplicate. We don't have a mandate from the public like every one of you do, so we don't claim to speak on behalf of the public, but we want to work with councils and publicly elected organisations to advance wellbeing in a joined up fashion. And there are some strategic lenses which are like principles, which I won't go into at this time because I'm sure they're consistent with you. Next slide. So earlier, very early on in the project, before I actually started, there was a significant effort across the region to talk to communities and understand what might be your wellbeing targets. And the Wellbeing Project uses the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as its organising framework, which is a group of 17 global wellbeing targets agreed to in 2015 to get us to a more sustainable planet Earth by 2030. The Waikato has selected a cluster of 10 of those. Sometimes they're one SDG, sometimes they're 2 or 3 together. In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to read all of them out right now, partly because I haven't memorized them, despite being at this for a couple of years, but also because you can look at them yourself whenever you like. But they speak about where could we get to if we are ambitious by 2030 as a region. And I'll come back to some of those shortly. Next slide. So what have we done? Well, as I said, we've not tried to boil the ocean. We've identified a few of these where we think we can make a little bit of a difference. So over the last couple of years, we've done the Waikato Rangatahi Challenge, which led to that report you can see on the right-hand side there, the case for change about youth wellbeing, which we can go into. And we're just kicking off the Waikato Kai Challenge. We've also been working with waste management and reduction organisations in the Waikato and the Regional Council and MFE around a Waikato Responsible Consumption Challenge, which is all around waste reduction. So we're choosing a few areas. We're not trying to do everything because we just don't have the capacity to do that. Next slide. So the Waikato Knowledge Centre, or Te Ara Poutama. This arose from my own experience, and I'm sure all of you have felt this too, where despite the fact that there's just data coming out of everywhere, what it means in terms of well-being and what knowledge we can get from it is very, very hard to get. It's very hard to go anywhere and get simple, easy, accessible knowledge and information about well-being in a way that makes sense. So we've developed a business case for what we're calling Te Ara Poutama, which is an easily accessible digital one-stop shop for well-being data in the Waikato region. It will use dashboards and indicators, and the display panels you can see in the foyer when you come in are a preliminary example of that. And the idea is to make that data more accessible to people in the real world so they can use it to make decisions about their well-being. We'd like it to be a trusted source of knowledge used by organisations and stakeholders, and a relevant resource that's as live and up to date as it can possibly be. You may be aware of the Regional Council's own amazing work around the Waikato Progress Indicators, and Bayat's in the room today, and the graphic at the bottom there is the summary graphic from the Waikato Progress Indicator. It's an amazing piece of work. We don't want to duplicate it. We just want to unleash it and make it more live and more relevant to smaller scale communities as well as the Waikato region, so that more people have that data at their fingertips and can make their own decisions about well-being. Next slide. That's just an example. You can look at those graphics out in the hallway. What we've tried to do is for each SDG area, show 4 global indicators, show 4 New Zealand indicators, and show 4 Waikato indicators. There's always a matter of judgment involved when you choose just 4, but the idea is to pique the curiosity of people so that they might then want to go and look at some deeper information. And so on each of these, you can see there's a QR code, and they're on the display boards out the front. Use your phone, hit the QR code, and there's more data there for you to look at. This is a very, very basic thing, but we want to really evolve this further from here. And we've also captured with all of these some of the manutaki reflections from our manutaki. And the way we did this, and I hope Jen and Bruce would agree, I said, tell me exactly what you think and I'll say, and I'll print exactly what you say. We don't go through any sort of editing to say, well, that's a little bit harsh, that's a little bit too honest. We're trying to really get honest reflections on how we're going against these targets. And I think it's a fair summary to say that the Waikato region does okay on GDP per capita, but against most of its other targets, it's a fair way off. Next slide. Lots of little fires. The best way for you to understand this is to go to the website and have a look. There are two stories here that are exemplified. The top one is a guy called Daniel Ormsby, who's an artist in Waitomo who works with youth and introducing them to art. And the second one is an amazing initiative in Raglan called Potama Rites of Passage, which works with young people, 14 to 15-year-old, mostly men, who are in danger of going off the tracks and pairs them together with adult male mentors for the young men and literally takes them into the bush for 4 or 5 days and gets them to reconnect with what it means to be a young man and what it means to be an adult. And the best quote that I've seen from this, and Pamela, I think I might have said this the other day, was one of the mentors said, we have an entire generation of uninitiated men. And I thought, wow, that's incredibly powerful. So what we're trying to do is amplify those kind of voices. We're not trying to say these are the only examples, but what we are trying to say is, hey, you know what? You can do it. If this inspires you, you don't need permission from anyone. Go and do it. And that's the flax roots up. You don't read it in a policy or a strategy. There are people doing it right now. Next one. So the last two priorities there in terms of using our voice to advocate and the Waikato, those are both about accountability, which is why I'm here today. Being clear on our roles, we do not want to duplicate the other work of anybody else. Agreeing on impacts and outcomes and targets, as we have done with you through your strategic framework. Sharing the leadership, collaborating, absolutely avoiding duplication and maximizing the impact that we have from our scarce resource. Next slide. I might just go to the next slide because that's a little bit hard to resolve at this level, Dave, and I can come back to it because it's just about our funding, but this makes the point. So the Well Energy Trust extraordinarily put $3 million towards this project over 5 years. Up until December, our overall expenditure was 1.2, so about 600K per year. The cash income is mainly from the Well Trust, so far about $1.4 million. But added alongside of that, and this is part of the partnership we have with the Regional Council and others, we've basically attracted into the project just over $1 million, and I can add to this slide now actually. So with the Regional Council's amazing support, we've had EBIT come on board and sponsor a petrol electric hybrid vehicle, which is worth about $30,000. Many staff in this organisation, in this building right now, make an amazing contribution to the Waikato Wellbeing Project just by doing their job. And so what we've tried to do is capture that a little bit. And over the first 2 years, that was worth about $145,000 in in-kind time. That's probably an extraordinarily conservative estimate. Manutaki, like Bruce and Jen and others, we estimated the rough time that they might be putting towards this. There's 25 of them. Over 2 years, it's $340,000. And then co-funding. So we put $50,000 towards an organic waste research project. The Regional Council and MFE put $234,000. We ran a SDG summit earlier this year. We put in 20, everyone else put in 60. You can read the rest of the figures. The point is that we put in a little bit to unleash a lot. Trust Waikato has just agreed to fund Te Ara Potama to the tune of $450,000 over 3 years. And that's a really, really great advance for us in terms of that. We're also partnering with the Regional Council on that initiative in an in-kind way to make sure that we're all working together on a single approach towards wellbeing measurement. A similar kind of approach with lots of little fires and the Kai Challenge that will be co-funded as well. Next, and I think the last slide, Dave. So our priorities this year, the progress report. So I'll give to Dave, or you can come and grab from me a report that we produced in February. It's everything that I've just taken you through, plus the graphics on our SDG indicators for the region. We held a summit on the 9th and 10th of February in the Waikato, a national summit on sustainable development. We co-funded that. We want to maximise impacts from those indicators and insights, roll out the operating model for hunger. So we've got a new contractor starting on Monday who will be the project lead for our Kai Challenge, commission the Knowledge Centre and link that to the work that you're doing on community outcomes and the long-term plan. We will continue to grow lots of little fires. We're releasing about 1 new video per month. There's one coming up in the next few days on Fairfield College and some incredible work that they are doing. We're really wanting to work alongside you on things like the review of the future of local government. For those of you who read your way through that report, there were some incredible references to work which we think is a model for the Waikato Wellbeing Project and for all wellbeing leaders. We're always looking for efficiency and effectiveness to make that money go as far as it can. And that is all about addressing funding sustainability, because it's a self-interested comment, but I don't want this project to end after 5 years. I think it's too important, Mr. Chairman. So happy to answer your questions.
So any questions from councillors? Any comments? Yes.
Harvey, at the end of 5 years, what outputs would you like to see? Assuming, you know, I know you don't want it to end, but what is your goal in the time frame?
Well, it goes to that framework, councillor, that I put up with the bars and the things hanging off them. I think really what we would see as impact is to really understand probably about 4 or 5 of those big wellbeing challenges for the Waikato region at a deep level, at a root cause level. Rangatahi wellbeing, Kai being the first couple, but there are others as well, which I think we need to actually get our head around as a region and understand far better than we have. So that's the research component. I would like to see Te Ara Poutama working in a way where communities actually say, what's our wellbeing challenges? What does Te Ara Poutama tell us? And how can we actually put knowledge and information into Te Ara Poutama as well? I would like the Waikato region to be known as a place where 480,000 people are doing wellbeing and doing it really, really well. And for us to be, without being immodest, a model for the rest of New Zealand on how to do this. But ultimately, I'd like to see those wellbeing targets move and improve, not just GDP per capita, but climate, biodiversity, hunger, poverty, health, education, employment, economic development. Those are the challenges.
Councillor Nicol?
Thank you, Harvey, for the presentation. I've seen a few by now, and it's definitely best one yet. So thank you. And congratulations for the Trust Waikato funding. That's a really great achievement for that data. And do also appreciate you putting up my favourite graph, which is that GDP wellbeing one. Definitely spoke to me. And I think with how much has been going on, we're well overdue for a catch-up, actually. So try and organise that. Other than that, yeah, really, really like the layout of where you've come from and where you're looking at going. Thanks.
Do I have it? Yes, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I am a little bit cynical in this space, so I don't intend to offend you or anyone else. I'm concerned about the amount of organisations that are in this space, whether it's directly called wellbeing or otherwise. I make considerable donations throughout the year, and that's my choice to organisations which I support, that support hunger and clothing for children and the likes. But listening to you, I'm just wondering what, it probably goes to Ben's question about the outputs, the KPIs, is where is the discernible difference, the discernible outcomes that that will be achieved? And with so many in the space and all being parochial, each contributing in their own way to the betterment of our children and others. And I read your report, and there's some nice, and I don't mean to be offensive, but flowery words that are nice to hear and people use them all the time. So really, the question is what will actually be achieved after 5 years that we can look back and say that was a great project to be involved with?
Well, thank you, Councillor. And I suppose, well-being is one of those areas where no one organisation can do it. And I think you and I would probably agree on that. And of course, success has many mothers, as we know. So when something goes very well, suddenly it was everybody's idea. And when it hasn't gone well, nobody was near it. And so we all collectively have a responsibility to identify what role we can play in order to advance these things. So I'll just give you an example. When we started on the Rangatahi Wellbeing Project, what we heard frequently from community organisations looking for resources to make a difference in terms of youth was, every time we go to a funder, they say, where's your business case? And they'd say, we don't have the resources to write a business case. We don't have the capacity to do that research, yet without it, we can't get the money. So we said, you know what? We'll do it for you. There it is. So we actually wrote this as a business case and as an investment case that any community organisation who is concerned with youth wellbeing, particularly in Hamilton because we were limited by COVID at that time, can actually put that in front of a funder and say that is, because that's research from the University of Waikato, from the voices of youth themselves, and say that is the best available information on youth wellbeing and the priorities according to the youth wellbeing sector in the Waikato on what needs to happen. That cost us $230,000. It did. That is now money well spent because we know already that there are community organisations and councils who are using this to actually back up the work that they want to do. And by pure chance yesterday, I ran into Andrew Macbeth, who's the police chief for Hamilton, and she said to me, that's a great bit of work. That's really helped us when we talk to people about what all needs to happen in order to support our youth, because it's got a cover on it and you actually give it to somebody and it's there for them to use. So that's just one example of what we're doing. So we are not at the front line, councillor. We are not, in terms of hunger, you won't find us, except as individuals, out there, for example, giving out food. But the question right now for me, to jump to that one, is where's the biggest problem and the biggest opportunity in our Kai system? Because there are a lot of philanthropics doing great, great stuff, and yet the problem keeps getting bigger. Something's wrong, but no one's got the time and the capacity and the resource to ask what's wrong. We're up for it.
Book and thought that cost a bit. So looking forward to getting a copy. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Look, if not, I just wanted to thank you for your presentation, Harvey. As usual, it was an excellent example of the style of communication that you and your team do throughout the region, and I am confident of the impacts that you're having. I'm also confident of the way that you have aligned with the regional council goals and objectives, and I think we're getting a huge flow-on synergistic effect from the work of the Waikato Wellbeing Project. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your hard work, and we'll see you again at some stage for another update. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. Would anyone like me to leave a copy of that report? I'll just maybe just put them on the table here, Mr. Chairman, and people can pick them up at their leisure.
Thank you, councillors.
So we have a resolution on the screen. Would somebody like to move? Councillor Smith and Councillor Nicol were the first two, sorry. All those in favour? Oh, carried. Thank you. All right, so now we move on. Yeah, so we're moving on now to the health and safety report, and Stuart, I'm assuming, yes, Stuart's here to cover this one off. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks very much. I'll take the report as read and go through a few things that I think may be of interest to you. You'll have seen the incident there that happened at TCDC with the contractor employed. It was obviously intended to be a fun event, and it ended up a pretty negative one for a lot of people that were involved there. And this again goes on. I mean, there's been a bit of a theme through my discussions over the last few months about engaging contractors. And this is another example of why we need to do that really well. And that it's really important that we have professionals here that, you know, are available to train our staff and ensure that we engage contractors that are competent and experienced operators. So we continue to focus on that. Moving through, you'll see the incident report by month, and in March, we've had an increase there of near misses, which is great to see. The team have been doing a drive across the organisation to ensure that near miss reporting is done more, basically, so we can get a handle on what's going on and then get to the bottom of any issues before they become an event. So that is a record high over the last 12 months and is great to see. And we've also been providing investigation training across the organisation to ensure that when these things come up, they're addressed quickly and to a high standard to ensure that we reduce the events where possible. Moving through, you'll see that as part of the incidents, we had a number of vehicle incidents this month past, and in previous months, we have been talking about, or I've brought to you that there have been external incidents going on with members of the public driving unsafely, or things being observed from our own staff that have been reported. Unfortunately, this month it has been the other way around, and we've actually had a number of incidents with our own staff, whether it be on mobile phones or driving unsafely, that's been reported. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that we're dealing with that via the code of conduct through relevant processes there to ensure that that is resolved. And we've looked at our vehicle policy and updated that. And have done a number of communications to the staff across the organisation to ensure that they're aware of the correct use of our vehicles. One other thing that I thought might interest you was a member of the public. We've got a medical emergency there at the transport centre. And that was actually one of our new staff members who joined us from GoBus. Was finished for the day and was heading home, and he walked out into the middle of the transport centre, and there was a gentleman had collapsed. And he attended to him immediately and contacted the emergency services. Lofty had no first aid training, but from the help and support of the emergency services, he was able to actually resuscitate the gentleman and bring him back to life. So that was an absolutely fantastic outcome there, and we were really appreciative. This is just one of a number of examples that have been happening across the organisation recently, which is really, really positive, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. Another thing which demonstrates good dynamic risk assessment on the fly is in the egress access piece there around, there was basically a number of staff that went out to a property and were due to drive across a field, and there was, well, they basically didn't deem it safe. It was a narrow access way and had a bank sloping off that was wet, and they decided at the time that it would be safer not to do that. So that was a really good example of them, going out to do their day job, to do an investigation and dynamically assessing the situation as it came about and deciding that it was unsafe to proceed. So it's great that the people have the confidence to do that. That were the key things that I wanted to bring to your attention. If you had any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Stu, for your report. Pleasing to note that the feedback from last time has been included in this one as well. Just a couple of points. I've noticed on occasion trucks parking in the cycle lane outside the office here to unload goods.
Yes.
And just, yeah, that's a real risky situation.
Okay.
Is there any way we could look into that?
Certainly is. I wasn't aware of that, but I will look into that.
And work with HCC, sorry, maybe to get that green cycle lane completely painted, because it's got gaps in it. And so people think they can park there, but you can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll certainly look into that. Thank you.
And yeah, really pleasing to see, sorry, yeah, that annual leave is being taken.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's
those
been a
high
constant
balances are
focus.
coming down.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Legal.
Thanks. Hi, Stu. paragraph 25, you talk about vehicle use, and the third bullet point was an event of dangerous driving, which was reported to 105 by a member of the public. So just wanting to understand, so a member of the public drove dangerously and we reported it through 105, or we drove dangerously?
No, that's, unfortunately, these instances this month have been our own staff that have been reported through that.
Good to
105
understand, thanks.
number, yeah.
If it had been a member of public, I was like, why is it going our stats? So,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
what do you do about that? Yeah.
Yep.
No, thank you. That's clarified that.
thank you.
Are there any more questions? No? If not, I'll thank you for your report, Stuart.
Thank you.
And we have a resolution on the screen. Mover, Councillor Strange, Councillor Cookson seconded. All in favour? Okay, so we now move on to a huge list of council minutes. So we should be able to get through these reasonably quickly, I think. But if people do have points they want to make, of course, that can be done. So we're going to start first at item 7.2, which is the council minutes for the 30th of March 2023. Are there any comments about those? Okay, so we have a mover, Councillor Strange, a seconder. Councillor Hughes, all in favour? Aye. And we have the committees reporting to council minutes now. So item 8 on page 54. Anything? If not, who's going to be the mover? Councillor Smith, seconded. Councillor Nicol, all in favour? Moving on. Now we have yeah, we better do that. Yeah. So yeah, we have Madam Chair waiting in the wings there. So could somebody move that we move back into public excluded? Councillor Nichols, seconded. Councillor Strange, all in favour? Aye. And I'll vacate the chair.